Hi, this is Aaron Azrod, and welcome to the 134th episode of the Truth Island podcast. One of those words, much like pride, that has seemingly gone from bad to being good is the word passion. When we think of the word passion in a modern context, we think of an actor moving to Los Angeles in the hopes of landing a big movie role, a painter working on their latest landscape, or an author plugging away countless hours into a novel they have no idea will be successful. Passion is often said to be a good thing, as countless young people are told each day by inspirational TED Talk speakers to simply follow their passions when seeking out a career or even deciding the best course of action for how they should be spending their time. However, the word passion was not always associated with romantic gestures or artistic masterpieces, but as something rather negative. In fact, one of the very first definitions for the word passion is a strong and barely controllable emotion, which has often been tied to lust. For example, when we think of evil operating in the world, we often think of these intentions as being controlled by lust, which in many ways is a cousin for passion, which is very befitting the phrase passionate lovemaking. Another side effect of passion is its ability to turn off our ability to reason and think critically. On one hand, this can be viewed positively, as it is the basis of countless romance novels and even the basis for numerous political causes. But on the other hand, our passion can often blind us to what is really sound and logical. Passion allows us to focus solely on a single object of desire, which is excellent for achieving results, but it can also blind us to alternative possibilities. Helping me to keep my passion, I am once again joined by Kenny. Kenny, I know you're married, but is there anything else in this world that you are passionately in love with?
No, not at all.
Good man, good man. Just, in case the wife's listening, we got to make sure we round our corners there.
No, I think that passions, at least, so if we're looking at it in, in the modern sense and how we often use it today, in like a follow your passion, or I'm passionate about the guitar, I'm passionate about, seafood. Um, I guess what people are simply trying to say for the latter, it's, I really like, they're trying to describe if there was a gradient of like, they're trying to describe they're trying to articulate that their gradient is on the far end of the liking of the enjoyment of these things. So like it's art or seafood. But if it's the former, I understand what they're saying too, but it's troublesome. This part of this usage of passion is also troublesome. But what they're trying to say is, follow the things that you like, follow the things that call out to you, the things that you naturally gravitate towards and enjoy. So those things I can say, you know what, fine. There's really no reason to attack to attack those usage, right? I mean, I should like those usage
Uses, right? Yeah.
uses, yeah, those specific uses of the word. But when we're talking when we're dealing with the way the ancient man thought of passions, then we're dealing with a whole different ballgame, and that's all kinds of hell. Um,
Yes.
Actually, you had mentioned in your introduction that it's literally turning off. It's an emotion that one can barely control. I mean, we have in the courts we actually have a category for this. Crimes of passion, and they're actually kind of looked upon with some sort of sympathy, which is understandable. But it's still understood that it's a crime. What you did was wrong. But the point is simply that we as human beings, because we can do better, because we are better than this, we as human beings ought to learn um, to deal with, because it can be a very troubling thing. I've never known anybody who says, you know what, my passions have only done me all every time I've expressed a passion, expressed my passions, it's turned out to be just fine for me. You know.
Yes, yes. I want to kind of just for now limit the boundaries of our discussion to the field of romance for just a sec. We'll talk about passionate music playing in a sec, but let's just think of romance for a second. So many of our movies, novels are typically a protagonist, typically a male protagonist, who does outlandish stuff to like win over a woman, right? He like, you think of the classic movie, the guy drives to the airport at the last minute and like picks up the good, no, Marianne, I love you, right? And like I think of the movie The Graduate, right, with Dustin Hoffman just running into that church, and right, and when we see that kind of passion, there is a certain shutting off of logic, right? Like this guy is like disrupting this woman's wedding where the parents have paid, thousands and thousands of dollars to have, right? He's doing something has no logic, but then tears come to our eyes and we say, oh my goodness, how beautiful. Even though that this guy is not being logical. Maybe he's turning down $1 million job. Maybe he's, marrying a woman who on paper is completely wrong with him, but it brings tears to our eyes and we think, wow, that is so amazing that this person is following their passion and shutting off logic for the sake of love. However, the Greeks, on the other hand, view this radically different. And I think that, I think of the Odyssey, where Odysseus and his men are being tempted by the sirens, like that they fall passionately in love with this wonderful music. But the Greeks warn us and say, whoa, man, whoa, slow down there. If you follow your passions, you're going to get eaten, because that's what the sirens would do. They were really monsters in disguise that would eat men who just followed the music and just followed their heart. And the way I've always interpreted that story is that if you just follow your passions, you're going to get eaten, because when you surrender logic and you surrender your reason for love or whatever, you're going to fall into a pit. I'm wondering why it is that our modern society has kind of just abandoned what the Greeks tell us, and we now think of passion as being this wonderful thing that has filled so many movies and so many romance novels.
Well, I'm sure that a historian or someone who's studied the subject vastly will do a better job at describing this. But I think I suspect it started at some point. Let's say with the at some point in history, I forget, some misunderstanding of romanticism, and it was the idea that I think I don't remember exactly what period, but I think it became the idea that romanticism was this, the knight must die, the knight must go on that journey, that quest to, that he must prove himself to his lady, and he must do basically an outlandish quest for her. And that idea really did seep into. I mean, we still to this day. For example, your description about the man who runs after the woman to the airport or the church. We think that these kinds of gestures are romantic. We think they're beautiful because, and it's actually a some sort of a noble deed to shut off your mind and simply go with your passions when it comes to romance. And it's seen as a virtue, a certain kind of like a romantic virtue. So it seems to be, people still see it, they see it as a romantic virtue, to be able to shut off your mind and go, do these very outlandish gestures of love. But here's the question, okay? Why is it that couples like that never stay together? They never stay together. The romance, quote unquote, the action, the gesture. I mean, if you look at the United States of America, half of marriages that occur in this country end in divorce. And I believe that, should I say, it's possible to believe that because we're living in a very romantic nation, a lot of those people propose in wonderful ways, from a roller coaster at the movies, running, making a freaking, hot air balloon with her face on it. Sure. But 2 years down the line, some of them actually, and especially if you're dealing with your, celebrity culture, it could be as early as 2 weeks and you're done. But what a really romantic gesture. I mean, the weddings look like something out of a fairy tale. The weddings are always so beautiful and outlandish. They're so passionate, but then their marriages never last. doing something like it, the romantic idea is really is something that's carried on. I think it's sort of what this nation was actually built on.
It's really funny that we're talking about this now, because I think the very last podcast I did with Alexander, we did talk about couples that, like you do meet some couples that say, yeah, I knew right away that she was the one. And sometimes it actually does work out. Sometimes
Yeah,
like they meet somebody, and they just know right away this person's the one. And I've heard stories like that. I am like you though. I'm a little bit more pessimistic, and I venture to say that people that have only been dating for a couple of weeks or whatever, and then they decide to get married, and especially if they're really young, right? Especially if they're like in their early 20s or late teens or whatever, I'm kind of skeptical, and I think that's a train wreck waiting to happen. Again, that's just my cynicism and data and all that good stuff. What's also interesting about this though is there has been a lot of research on couples that cohabitate with one another. They live with each other before they get married for a number of years, and that's a lot of time to start sniffing somebody, right? Like that's a lot of time to be like, oh, okay, she gets out of the shower this way or whatever, or doesn't, or leaves the dishes like that. Like it's a long time, and you would think, well, if this couple like lives all these years together and sniffs each other out and finds all their quirks and all this other stuff, their marriage would be more robust because they have more time to learn about each other. That's only the logical thing to conclude.
yeah,
But the research actually shows that people that live together prior to getting married are more likely to get divorced. So even if you're being super logical, super cautious, super careful, and let's just be honest, what makes for a better romance novel? Like, oh yeah, I lived with Jennifer for 4 years, and then we went down and we decided to get married, and then I burst into the church and rescued her from this evil wedding or whatever, right? Like, but from a statistical standpoint, the couple that actually does it the boring way and lives like 4 years before getting married and really gets to know one another, they're actually the ones that are more likely to get divorced than the ones that, maybe get married just like on a whim.
yeah, because the people who are getting married on a whim and the people who are, I mean, it's not even about getting married on a whim. There are people who got married on a whim and their marriage have lasted 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of here it's not so much a matter of how quickly you get married or how long you stay together before you get married, but more along the lines of what you understand about the world and how relationships actually work. Now, there's some people who understand relationships intuitively, and others who have done hard work to figure out, okay, I'm going to be married. I'm going to basically spend my life with this woman or this man. How do I go about that in a way that's not, not people think that because it's modern, it must be good. It's like technology. We equate ideas to technology. It's like, okay, it's the new improved Ford Wrangler. It's like it's a Jeep Wrangler, I believe. So it's new improved Jeep Wrangler. It's like, oh, well, it's of course it's new and improved. It must be better. Well, yeah, sure, but it's not always the same way with with ideas. We think, okay, because it's an idea that's been pervasive in the 21st century, we ought to live our lives and build our marriage on it, or live our romance. It's never about our romance on it. And then we end up finding out that it was the most catastrophic idea that we've ever experienced. So I think it's really people, young or old, doesn't matter, who can figure out really, because there are patterns in this world. There are things you just don't do. I don't care where you are. If you slap a man, he's going to slap you back, unless his ethics or his values dictate otherwise. But naturally, people just want to slap you right back. So the point is simply that there are things in this world you don't do. There's a way to be in the world so that the world doesn't pummel you. And so there are the people who get married on a whim. Yeah, passionate. It's like, yeah, sure. Let's just do it, right? We're young, we're hip, and then it ends up in some sort of a very unpleasant situation. And the people who don't get married but stay together and stay live together forever and end up getting married and still not working out, well, they're the exact same kind of person as the other person. It's just there are people who, it is so logic being logical and careful doesn't necessarily mean that you I don't know, understand how things work. It just means you're scared. It means you're a coward, basically. And well, here's one I know about women: they don't really like cowards. So I think that it's not really about being careful. It's not really about being, rash and brash. It's really about understanding the world, because logic and wisdom, I'm sure they often go hand in hand, but they're not often the same things.
I agree with that. Like I think that, if you took a girl out to a date on Valentine's Day and say, well, logically, I don't think that we should be married at this particular juncture. Like, I mean, like, who the hell are you, right? It's like, am I going out with a chemistry professor here or something? Right? It's pretty much a buzzkill to say things like that. While you were talking though, you actually triggered a thought in my head.
So
Maybe it's okay to be initially passionate about something, like, oh, oh my god, this woman, I'm passionate, I'm head over heels. Maybe there's some beauty in that, there's some romance that's there, and that should be celebrated. I think it's how we apply logic and reason in the aftermath of that passion that really is going to determine how it works, right? So like, you can, and you can, we're talking about romance right now, but later on we can probably apply this to much more. It's like, you can
yeah,
have a passion for something, but you have to be prepared for the consequences of what happens when that passion wears thin, and now logic and reason kind of have to take over.
yeah. So I would have to step back on that, and here's why. I think that passions, come naturally, and I believe that they're not something. There's certain passions, certain things that just happen naturally that we until we reach a certain level of maturity, we just have going to have to accept the fact that this is going to be the case. But just because they're the case doesn't mean they're the right response, or should I even say they're the appropriate response, or should I say they're the most helpful response? If somebody shoves me in a subway, my natural passionate response is to get angry. That's just it. That's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to get angry. But it's not going to be helpful in that situation now, because it's going to escalate the situation. And before I know it, I'm going to be spending the night in jail or dead. So I think that a romantic response, or a passionate romantic response, um, is often the natural response to a woman or a man that you're very interested in. But it's not always, how you say, the best response. It's not how you say. It's not always the. Or should I even say? It's not the response. It's not the vehicle that you use to convey your interest, because passions has a way of being very well, we've mentioned it before, illogical, in the sense of, not illogical in the sense of, well, should I be, no, it's not like freaking Sheldon, no, not Sheldon's illogical, no, not like a Sheldon's logic. But we're talking about just a rational, decent human man, or a rational, decent human woman. Because and there are people who don't mind this. I'm just speaking this because at the end of the day, right now, what I'm about to say is super, subjective. At least, yeah. So at least it's subjective, because the way I see it, a passionate man or a woman, how they express that gesture, that kindness, hasn't really been thought through. It's not really their kindness. It's a passionate response. It's an automatic response. It's almost like a response. It's almost like a choiceless response. It means that you just felt it and you acted. You didn't really choose. It's subhuman. It's not really human. Is it anything? To be human is to choose. That's what makes us so brilliant, so different, so unique in the way that we mold ourselves. Every choice we make as human beings molds us into a certain kind of human being, a certain kind of category, and it really does define the kind of person we are before we die. So if you're making if you're making how you say decisions, or, and it's basically not decisions, but it's if you're reacting to situations in a passionate way, you're not really choosing. You're not really making those decisions critically. You're not saying, listen, I'm going to buy her flowers because I think she'll like that. It's just like, flowers, oh, that's romantic. Yes, I'll do it. Blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, you're doing these wonderful things, but not as a human being. You're doing it as a creature, yet a harmless creature, but a creature nonetheless.
I like what you're saying, actually, and I think you're right that even in the midst of passion, there has to be logic applied to that situation. And I like the example, like I've been in situations where I'm driving along and some guy curses me out. He's like, what the hell did you do? And the passionate move, right? Like the Bruce Willis move is for me to get out of my car and be like, what did you say? Right? Like that's like the passion talking, right? The passion is there. That's like the badass Bruce Willis move to do. But in those situations, my logic always kicks in and says, okay, here's what the passionate thing to do is, and here's the logical thing. And the logical thing is to just ignore it, not make eye contact, and just keep on driving by. And people will call that cowardly or whatever. But I'm like, no, I'm just a logical human being. And if I stop and curse this guy out and it escalates, it's going to be a disaster for the both of us. There's no reason to do that. So my logic always kicks in. And I
Yeah.
think you're right that even in romantic encounters, logic is still there. Maybe it's not in the forefront, but it's still there in the background. And I'll give you a really, really kind of forgive me, this is a very carnal example,
Oh
but
my.
right, this is going to be very carnal, but let's say you're passionately in love with somebody and then you're making love, but then you stop and say, hold on now, I need to put on protection. Right. So even though you're passionately in love with this woman, you're stopping yourself and saying, whoa, let me put on a rubber here. That's an example of where you have passion, but you still have the undercurrents of logic being like, okay, even though I love this woman, I only know her for 2 weeks, and I don't know what the hell my life will be like if I have a baby with her. So that's an example of where you have passionate lovemaking, but at the same time, you're pausing it for just a second and taking the necessary precautions because you don't know if she's going to be the right one to start a family with.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I would say that even the love making itself is in the passions. In the sense of if you don't know her that well to the point where you're comfortable enough to be comfortable with her, what the hell are you doing in her bed, mate? What are you doing? You must, you must have been there for a reason, or should I say, for a reason that may be no reason other than the fact that you wanted, um, the jolly goods.
Well,
And we,
hold on one second there.
exactly.
You could, let's say you meet a girl when you're 18 years old, okay? You're 18 years old. There's no way in hell that you're in a position that you're going to be able to start a family. You're only 18, you're a kid. You don't have the means of actually starting a family. And and you meet this woman and you're making love with her and you say to yourself, okay, yeah, I love this woman, I want to be with her, but hey, I'm 18, she's 18, we're just kids, we're just not ready right now. That's logic, kind of kicking in saying, hey, just wait until you're a few years out into the workforce and you have the down payment for whatever. Like I think that you could still be passionately in love with somebody, but then you still have logic and reason in the background, like running in the background, being like, hey, you're 18, man, just hold off a little bit here, and then let's handle this sensibly.
Well, then we're dealing with all kinds of things here because the question is when you say you're passionately in love with her and you want to go to bed with her, the big question is in love with what? Which part of her are you in love with? What do you mean by love? Do you love her values? Does she love your values? Do you love her parents? Do you love where she comes from, where she's going? What do you mean by you're passionately in love with her? What is the anchor in which your love is found? I mean, let's just say the same exact thing. You found a young lady that you were quote unquote passionately in love with, right? And then you found out that that she was born with some sort of, let's just say, HIV, but she inherited it from her parents in birth, right? All right, what next? What next? Do you still want to sleep with her? And do you still want to pursue a relationship, a future? Do you still want, what are you passionately in love with? I'm saying that what I'm trying to describe here is that whenever there is a passionately in love with anything, the passions is a fleshly desire. The passions is a very fleshly. It's not a soul love. It's not a matter of, oh man, I like her. There's something about her in the sense of when I see her, I know who she is. And if I don't know, I'm curious. I want to know who she is. I want to sit down, even if you let's just say we are at some point going to make sweet passionate love, sure, whatever. But the point is simply when you say you're passionately in love with someone, it's never really about the person. It's about what your fleshly desires wants from that person. So the two are kind of, how you say, it's like a paradox. To be passionately in love is to be passionately selfish.
It's funny. I hear the passion in your voice, man. This is spoken like a true Casanova. Like talking to you, like talking to you, I actually feel like the cold, cynical scientist being like, well, no, okay, let's take that example of, let's say you are in love with somebody that has a sexually transmitted disease. Okay, I think that was actually a good example that you just brought up there. You could be passionately in love with them, and there might be some way that you can still have kids with them and start a family with them. However, I don't think that passion is lessened by you just saying, hey, you do have a sexually transmitted disease. I do need to rubber up so that disease is not transmitted from you to me. I don't like shame that guy and say, hey man, you're not really passionately in love with that woman unless you accept that sexually transmitted disease from her or whatever. So this is why I think that both of these forces can actually be operating in the brain at the same exact time, right? Like I think that you can have one part of your brain that is just illuminated with passion of like, I love this person, I want to give them everything, I want to spend my life with them, and so forth. But there's always that other part of the brain that is just like, hey, I'm only 18 years old. I can't start a family right now. Hey, this woman has a sexually transmitted disease. I got to rubber up to make sure that doesn't spread. I think that these two systems can be operating in the brain. I think scientists would call it right brain versus left brain, however you want to like break it down. I think you can have both of these things. I think it becomes highly dangerous when you shut off one part of the brain entirely. So if you become a cold calculating scientist, well, that's also dangerous because now your life has no passion, it has no flavor, it has no taste, it has no excitement, right? So if you shut off your logic and reasoning, if you shut off all of your passion, all of your artistic cravings, and you're just a logical robot, that can be dangerous. But I think that shutting off logic and reasoning and just being a passionate butterfly is also equally as dangerous. So I think having both of these systems operating on and off, and when I say operating at the same time, I don't mean that they're actually operating at the same time. I mean they're actually shutting on and off at different intervals and during different circumstances of that romantic encounter. So you're at a Valentine's dinner. Well, now you're allowing your romance and your passion to take the forefront and your logic to kind of recede into the background. However, you then come to some other kind of critical juncture like buying a house together, and now all of a sudden you're allowing your logic and your reasoning to come to the forefront and the romance to kind of sit in the background. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I really, it does make sense for us. The point is simply that, I mean, but there's a difference. There's a difference in the sense of, so the young man who, if you even listen to what the examples of the things the young man was thinking about concerning the young lady, all of them have to do with his own safety and his own security, not hers. Second is, the idea that it's not about him taking on the disease himself. The idea was simply to illustrate that passions have to do with the fleshly desire. It's all about the woman's body or the man's body. It's not really about to love a human being. We say that, I remember someone had mentioned, I forget, I really want to give this person credit, but I forget where I heard this from, is that a person had said that, we love our mothers, but we also love ice cream. In the sense we love everything. We just love this, love that, and then we expect, and when someone tells us I love you, that they mean it. The person just 5 minutes ago talked about how much they love fish tacos. And the truth is, I'm not very sure that her love for you is any greater than the love for fish tacos, mate.
Oh no, the word love has been cheapened in our culture beyond belief. I agree with you, man. Like you should say, oh, I have a proclivity, I have an affinity for fish tacos. Totally cool.
Yeah.
And now we're dropping the love word for I love Doritos. And I agree with you, man. It's that word has been completely bastardized by our society, man. Totally,
Yeah.
totally right about that.
So that's the thing is that, and it may not be simply, I mean, we could have the same word to describe it all. But the point is that, and I don't know where if which came first, the chicken or the egg. The point is simply that our just like our trivialization of the word love, we also trivialize the actuality of love itself. We live in a country where people often say "I love you" before they hang up the phone. They just do with their family members, brothers, sisters, wives, and children, and so forth. And it's the truth. Hopefully, well, what I mean is, it's the truth that that's what they do. But I don't know if that's the truth of how they actually feel. But because at the end of the day, the way we treat each other as human beings is phenomenal, you know? So one of the reasons I really like celebrity culture is because they exemplify this. They're all about, have you ever seen The Boys?
Oh, the
It's
superheroes.
the
Yeah.
superhero thing,
Excellent.
Yes, yeah,
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent show.
it's a great experiment in the human experience. So here's the thing, okay? I like Homelander. Here's why. Because he understands that people are schmucks. And this is what he does, all right? He's a bastard, but listen to what he does. He comes down as a superhero, lands, cracks the ground, smiles, winks, points at them, and says, "You guys are the real heroes." No, we're not. It's the same thing stars do to us. That terrible condescension where they look at us and say, "You guys are the real stars." No, we're not. We're not. We paid like 100,000 of us literally just gave you hundreds of millions of dollars right now to sing a song. Okay, so we're not the real stars, but stars exemplify this in their lives in the sense of, you know they're very passionate people, and you hear them talk about how passionate they are about everything. Here's the interesting thing. It's hard to find a couple's relation, a star's, star. And I don't want to pick on them. I just want to use them as an example because this is actually how what they do.
Sure.
Often when they get into a relationship, the media covers it. And when they're talking to the media, talking about how wonderful it is, how exciting it is, how brilliant it is, how passionate both of them are. And then the coy interviewer always wants to talk about their sex life. And they usually give a wink and a nod to it, like, oh, it's there, or he's packing, or she's whatever. But here's the thing. After all that declaration of love, after all that declaration of his fineness and his goodness, or her kindness and her wonderfulness, and how they literally they often say, not always, but they often say this, "He's changed my life." After all that life changing, a month later you hear they're getting divorced.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So this to me, that is the peak of passions. That is what passions does, especially romantic passions. That's what it does.
Well,
At the end of the day,
I think it also, I do think there's another component to that as well.
well,
And that is, I think people are just easily, like one thing, and this is something that I've only discovered, you know, more like I knew it to be true when I was younger, but it didn't actually, like, I didn't actualize it as a truth until much later, that all love is basically silent good actions for one another. Like, I actually hold that to be a much higher standard of love, is just, hey, I'm doing this silent kind act for you. It doesn't need to be broadcasted to the world, doesn't need to be put on your Instagram or your Facebook. Look at us going to the amusement park or whatever, right? Like, love is really just a bunch of silent, thankless, like completely thankless, like, hey, I know you had a hard day. There's some hot cocoa on the table. Just done silently, just done, without anyone ever asking you. I think those are the highest forms of love. And I think that those celebrities, they truly believe that they are in love because they haven't actually figured out the proper definition of love. So, oh yeah, he's changed my life and all that stuff. Yeah, they say I love you a lot on the phone, and they actually think that that's love because they haven't actually done the research. They haven't actually put in the legwork in obtaining the wisdom to realize that love is actually very silent and thankless behaviors that occur on a daily basis. That's true love right there. True love is, man, I ironed your pants without even you asking me to, or something along those lines. Or, hey, I saw that you were sick and I just decided to take care of that for you. That's real love. And I think I think that those people think that they're in love. They just don't have the proper wisdom to know what love actually is.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so, but just just because you think you're in love, and I mean, but here's the thing: is that it's part of our culture as Americans. It's part of our culture. That kind of love is the ideal. Can you imagine? We're living in a world where that's the ideal place to be. Used to heard a story of a young lady who had decided to leave her husband because he wasn't as passionate or as exciting as this other young lad courting her, right? Just flirting with her. So she left him because he wasn't as exciting.
Yes.
Yes. And then here's the thing. Here's the thing. And then the other bugger left her
Yes.
after he wanted. So the idea that this is the ideal, that love is this passionate, always well, I think passion is a proper word for this, always passionate every day romantic love is ridiculous.
Yes. Okay, what you just said is immensely important, and I actually think that you've just thrown the ball back into the court of the Greeks, because I've heard this 1,000 times over. There's, oh, we went on vacation, we did all the crazy stuff. He showed up to my apartment, my dorm room with flowers. Okay, and then what happens is that banality starts kicking in, right? You're married, you got bills to pay. You figure out, oh man, this guy snores or whatever. This girl snores when she goes to sleep. Sometimes he just lets out a fart. It's annoying. Like all of this banality starts kicking in, and it completely destroys the passion, completely destroys the romance. That's where I think true love begins. That's actually where I think. I think that if you have 6 months of bliss and romantic chocolate and whatever, that's not actual love. I think the true love begins when the banality, the moment that banality and that reality sets in, and the way that the kindness in which you treat each other in moments of banality and boredom and just monotony, that is where true love actually begins. Because I think that many people, when times are really awesome and we got honeymoon vacations, every month coming up on the calendar, really easy to be in love, really easy to quote unquote love each other. And I'm using the word love very loosely in that context. The true love kicks in when the realities of life start weighing upon both of you, and then your true character is tested. And that's why I think a lot of those celebrity marriages and so forth just crush, because they had passion. Like, I believe them when the two celebrities say, oh, we had all this passion. I 100% believe that, and I believe it to be true. And I believe that they're not lying to us. They're actually being earnest in the way that they're describing that. They just don't realize that, once the banality kicks in, we're going to find out that we actually don't love each other.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I believe them. I just don't take them seriously.
Yes, yeah, good way of phrasing it. Yeah.
I believe that they believe what they're saying, but and if they, yeah, but it's just a normal way of how we go about things here.
I think
Yeah.
actually, based on what we just discussed about romance, I think we're ready now to extrapolate this principle to other facets. If that's okay with you, if you're ready to
Oh,
move
that's
on.
perfectly fine, sir.
Okay, so I think that if we use the example of romance, and I'm actually glad that we went there first, let's take a musician, okay?
Hmm.
Let's move this to another domain now. Oh my God, I started playing the piano and I'm passionate and I'm in love with it, okay? It's the same thing as a romantic encounter. You're learning how to play the piano. You're passionately in love with it. You want to be the next Elton John, whatever, okay? What happens though is that you find out maybe after the first 3 months of playing the piano, if you're actually in love with it, when it starts to really suck, right? Like that's when the truth begins to come out. It's like, because when people learn something, there's actually this phenomena that, like, when you're learning something new, you actually learn a lot within the first 2 weeks. Like, if you people who actually go to the gym and work out, they lose a shit ton of weight within the first 2 weeks, but then after they lose all that like water or whatever, it becomes a lot harder to lose weight after the first 2 weeks. And it's like anything else. You learn a lot in the beginning, but then you hit a plateau. You hit like, wait a minute, I'm not feeling the results. I'm not feeling that chocolatey goodness anymore. That's when that yeah, that's when you start having to come to terms of like, am I really passionate about this thing? Like if you're learning the guitar and you're learning a lot, or the piano and you learn a lot in the first month, you might say, yeah, this has been my passion all along. But then it's month 7 and you're just not learning all that quickly, and it's kind of a drudgery, like it's kind of a task to keep doing it. That's where true love actually emerges, because you're still doing something even though you're not reaping the benefits of it immediately.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. But I think that the problem really does arise in our language. Because we're a romantic nation, we have romantic ways of describing things that are not romantic in any way whatsoever. So, for example, going to the gym is not at all romantic. It's actually pretty, how you say, um, it's pretty blood and guts. So, so when we go to the gym, we need to have warlike language, because that's what it's going to be. In fact, I would say that any endeavor that we pick up is going to be warlike. It's not going to be romantic at all. Um, and here when people start describing things like this is where I stop believing. I don't even try to believe. I don't even want to believe, because often people want you to believe that they're passionate about something because they really want to be, they like the idea of being the kind of person who is passionate about something, whatever the hell that means. I have no idea what kind of, of course it's kind of like, the films about the geniuses, who play it. He was born with a guitar clasped between his fists. Oh, oh my.
Well, hold on. I think I can help with this definition a little
Talk
bit.
to me, please.
Okay. Maybe you're truly passionate about something if you can still do that thing in the absence of success. Okay. You're truly passionate about something if you can still do it in the absence of success. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, if you do something and you're really good at it right away, like immediately, right? You don't know if you're actually passionate about. And I'm going to give you a good example of this.
Please do.
I've worked with a lot of math teachers, a lot of them, okay? And I've
Oh,
talked to a lot of them. And I always have this question of like, what made you decide to become a math teacher? Like, why did you feel that was the right career? And I always get the same answer from 90% of them. I was really good at it. It just came natural to me. I was just really good at it. And I can tell in the way that they give that explanation, they're not really passionate about it. They're just doing something that came easy to them, right? It came easy to them. They got instant results. They just put minimal effort. It just came easy to them. And that's why they decided to become a math teacher. It's actually a lot harder. Like, you really are demonstrating your passion for something when you're doing something. You're not rewarded for it. You're not successful for it. It doesn't come easy to you. It's painful. People don't care about what it is that you're doing. That's where your true love and your true passion is being tested, because you're not getting that instant gratification or that instant livelihood from doing that endeavor. You're actually suffering. Your passion is causing you to suffer in some way.
yeah. So even when we describe it as passion, let's say a person's, passion, as people are passionate about math and all that. So we had earlier we had, figured out, I think, based on your search, that passions had to do with, the idea of passion was described, or defined as, mindlessly, like a brainless, or shutting off your reasoning ability in order to follow your emotional desires, right? Emotional is
Yes,
your.
yeah, that was actually one of the definitions I pulled out from the dictionary. Yes.
Okay. So when a person, that's the question then, when a person says they're passionate about math, piano, guitar, singing, movies, what are they, what do they actually mean passions, or are they really saying something else but using a different word? Because to be passionate about is to be filled with emotion. Is to be filled with uncontrollable, or barely, as you mentioned before, barely controllable emotion, and having reason either tucked away or so dim that you can barely hear it. So how does how does a passionate person deal with a piano? I mean, do you hug it? Do you run at it and just hug it? You know, do you what do you do? Do you just run and sit there? And I mean, I would imagine that you need some sort of reason in order to deal with the piano in some capacity, because you have to sit, you have to put your fingers at the right place, push the press the keys in the right sequence, and so forth. So are they really passionate? Are they really filled with that uncontrollable or barely controllable emotion? Or are they simply trying to describe something else that's going on, but using either language that comes close but not close enough, or language that just has absolutely nothing to do with what they're actually experiencing?
Okay, I
Yeah.
want to talk about that piano for a second here.
Yes, please.
So I think that passion for the piano comes when when the piano does not love you back. And what that means is that, let's say you're a Mozart or something, and I'm sure Mozart had some really rough days that he just couldn't make genius work come out. The piano was not loving him back. He just could not finish this sonata or whatever it is that he's working on. But he loved the piano even when the piano was not loving him, even when it was a struggle, even when it was banality, even when it was monotonous, even when he was like, he wrote some giant thing out and then he's like, holy crap, I just wrote garbage, I got to throw this into the fireplace and forget about it. That's true passion right there, is that even when that thing is not loving you back, you're still coming back to it, even though it's not giving you any kind of earthly reward in that moment. Now we could say with Mozart, well, he was enough of a genius that he knew eventually would pay off. But let's just take a piano person who is
Okay.
not renowned for being a piano person, right? They're just or
Yeah.
pianist, right? I think that's the
Mhm.
right word. So let's say you're a pianist, but you do it because you love doing it, but you're not famous for it, or it's not bringing money into your household. Well, there's a true passion there, because that piano is causing you pain. It's causing you to suffer. It's causing you pain. It's causing you heartache. But you're and everyone around you, we all know this person, right? Maybe we all know this person who's deeply passionate about their piano or their guitar, but everyone's like, bro, you're not making any money off of this, bro. Like, come on, dude, you're not using your brain here. You're not being logical, man. Learn how to code Python or whatever it is, right? Like we know these kind of people. But I would say in that case, that is true passion, where your logic, your reasoning, other people are telling you this is not putting bread and butter on the table. You need to divert your attentions elsewhere, but you just have that love that just cannot be quenched by anything else.
Okay, so I see. So you would describe at least this particular passion as an experience where a person is clinging to the object of their passion in spite of the difficulties it brings.
Yeah, or like, they're sticking to it through misfortune, and they're also sticking with it despite the low probability of any success yielding from it.
Okay, okay.
I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this, but I guess we need to discuss, like, is this healthy behavior? So I think maybe we need to discuss, like, because on one hand, that struggling, starving artist, there's something beautiful about it, right? Like Van Gogh. I always point to Van Gogh as being the perfect example of this, is that the man died without being famous, right? Like he died, I think, in 1890 or something like that. He sold one painting in his entire life. Like he painted every single day. He sold one painting, died in 1890. If he had lived 11 years later, like if he had just lived 11 years longer and lived to be in 1901, he would have seen himself become famous. Really, really, really tragic. And there's something remarkably beautiful about something tragic, but also remarkably beautiful about his story, because there is a man who followed his passion even though he didn't receive any earthly rewards. However, the guy did commit suicide. Like this actually probably did, result in him eventually taking his own life. So I'm wondering if this type of passion is something to be applauded, or is it something that we need to kind of check ourselves for and be like, hey man, you're going off a crazy path here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, okay, first of all, no, though I understand how people, use the term today as passion, passionate for this, or, romantic passion, and then, and then difference is the whole passion, um, passion as an overwhelming, or should I say, an inertial force, a driving force. Um, I'm not a big fan of any passion whatsoever, but I understand why it's used, at least why that word is used the way it's used today. Now, when we're dealing with someone like Van Gogh or anybody like him, people who really like what they do, because I'd rather say they really liked what they do, because I don't think that it would have, it would have looked, it might have, who knows? Um, because when we're dealing with passions, I think we're dealing with something that can become very troublesome, that can become very disturbing. But like I said, it's fine as it's used today. I don't mind it, because I think I sort of kind of understand what they're trying to say. But when we're dealing with something that someone like Van Gogh, or people who really enjoy or passionate about what they do, um, it comes down to, it really does come down to the individual. Because often, I mean, you hear stories about, for example, Jay-Z, his family, I believe his uncle had told him that, listen, man, this is a waste of time. Don't do it. That man is one of the richest Black men alive today. It's just that simple. He's doing, it's safe to say he's doing well for himself, you know? I think, I think that, we have to, human beings, we like to butt in. We like to step into people's lives as authoritative figures, and we like to fix their lives, and we like to be responsible for people who are not asking us to be responsible for them. At the same time, and I can understand both sides, because on one side, on the spectator side, you don't really want this kid to get hurt. And you don't, and often it's not. Sometimes not really about the kid. Sometimes about you. You failed, so you think they're going to fail. You know, and so it's understandable, even if as some of it might be silly, some of it might just plain old wicked. It's understandable because we're humans. But not every human is made from the same cloth, mate. Where one person succeeds, another person will drastically fail, and vice versa. So I think that when people really want to follow what they've got, that calling inside, that's something that they just cannot do without. Let them. What's your business, mate? What's your business? If you really love them, stay close by. If you really love them, stay close by, so that if they do fail, you can help them. But people don't do, yeah, love. I love you, mate. You say, I love you, 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 I love you. And then when you need their help, they're gone.
Right. I really love you, but you need to stop painting right now and get a real job, right? And it's like, well, that's love with conditions, right? Like
well, it is, but you can't. You see, even I can't make a demand upon another person to love another person properly. Denzel Washington once said, "You can't legislate love." He's bloody right. You can't do shit like that, you know. So, but if people have the nerve to step into your life and tell you what to do, if they have the ball, they ought to have the same bloody balls to step in when things go haywire to help. So the point is simply, if you're not going to be willing to help a person when things go bad, don't step into their lives, period. Leave them alone, because the world is filled with people who talk so much about love and talk so much about how they want to be there for you, or whatever it may be, and end up disappearing. And some of them actually come in and convince people not to do what they really want to do, and destroy people's lives and hearts. So um, I would say it's really tailored to the individual. Some individuals are going to make it, and others are going to fail. But you never really know who you. I mean, you might know who you are if you're not, if you're not up to it, right? Stop it. But if you really never know, for those of us who are spectators from the sidelines, we can either, you know, quietly watch them and help them if we really care, if we want to, if we really care about them, quietly watch. If they don't make it, help them. If they do make it, well, congratulate them and walk away. But don't step into their lives thinking you know best for them, especially if they're not your kids, and especially if they're old enough to make decisions for themselves. Because that's exactly what it means to be human, to make those kinds of decisions, to shape our lives and our souls in those kinds of, um, little, little, little choices.
Really, man, those are some incredibly wise words. And I think it reinforces what we discussed earlier, that the people that truly love you are very silent actors in our lives, in the sense that, they're not outwardly professing love every 5 seconds. But when you're in shambles, right? Like I imagine a vase that just falls down to the ground, right? And it shatters all over the floor. They're the ones that just quietly pick up the pieces with super glue and put you back together. And they don't say they don't announce to the Instagram or the world that they're doing that. They just silently take the super glue out and put the pieces together. And then lo and behold, you're a vase again.
Mm.
And I think that you're striking upon that. Very last thing, we are approaching the hour mark, so this will be the very last thing that we talk about. Suppose you are that person that's enthralled within that passion. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and let's just say you zone out other people. There is a part. How does one regulate themselves? Because I think you can, I think your advice is really solid. Like, zone out other people if they're trying to harm you or dissuade you from whatever. Totally good advice. How do you regulate yourself and realize, hold on, wait a minute there. um am I being logical here with my love for the piano? Am I being logical for my love for this woman that I've known for 3 weeks? So how do we kind of test our own passion? Because I think there has to be a way that we as individuals need to check and monitor what we're getting passionate about, and then make sure that we're actually being logical in the way that we're pursuing that passion.
Yeah. So it comes back to earlier what you said. No, so I would never tell a person to zone out the advice. I would say the people who are giving the advice to actually stop giving the advice. But of course, we're never going to stop giving the advice, are we? So so it's up to the artist or the person who is in love with the thing or passionate about the thing, to listen, to pay attention, because they might be saying something true. They might be saying something true. Now here's where your test comes in. If you get angry, if you get, angry enough to be stupid, to curse them out, to believe they don't care about you, because obviously they care about you, they're just being troubling and they're immature, but they do care about you. At least often that's the case. Listen, if they're making a valid point, you have to acknowledge that. Now, if you choose to continue in spite of that valid point, you must have a reason for that. If you say, listen to me, like, money doesn't really mean all that much to me. And if you're honest about that, if that's really your reason, that money doesn't mean what it means to others, it doesn't mean the same thing to you, well, that's a valid reason. It means that your values are different. It means that you're the where money, where the valuation of money is in that person's heart or mind,
Hmm.
something else exists there for you. It could be, I don't know, fulfilling your own, well, not your own, I don't know. Um, it could be that downtime. It could be that silent time with the object of your desire. It could be, the time or the things that specific desire affords you. Because many people who play guitar get a chance to travel with your friends, and in your little dinky vans, and travel the country playing at different gigs, and they really value that, and
Yeah.
that's really more valuable than money.
And they make
And so,
incredible sacrifices. They sleep in that van. Yeah, totally.
yeah, but that's the thing, is that it's all about reason. If you're still making reasonable decisions, now here's the thing about reasonable decisions. A person's reasonable decisions are simply this: a decision that is made for a reason. That's it, for a reason. Now, if you're making reasonable decisions, I hope you're making good reasonable decisions. Because if once you say, no, I'm just doing it because I want to do it, then you're really into something, mate. You're not really thinking, are you? You're not really thinking. I've seen the look in your eyes and you're far gone. So if you're making reasonable decisions and you're listening to others, if you're listening to others' criticism about you and what you're doing, listen, because sometimes, even if they're nuts, they might know something you don't know. A friend was telling me about this yesterday. He was telling me about this. He said they're only seeing a piece of the painting. Yes, a lad named Drew Nicholas. He says they're only seeing a piece of the painting. It doesn't mean that they're right about the entire painting. No, but they are right about that piece. Often they're right about that piece. They can describe it. They say that's a leg. That's a leg. All right. We don't know what the leg belongs to. We don't know where it's going, but we can say that's a leg. That's what humanity is often like. We don't have the whole picture. But we're describing what we see. All right. But if someone is coming out there and saying, "No, that's not a leg. I thought there was a chimney," and that guy's, you don't listen to him. He's over. Yeah. But but often people I would say that people often have your best interest in mind, and even if they are seeing just a little bit of the picture, they're still seeing something that you can pay attention to. And if you're gonna refute it reasonably, not as a 14-year-old fist fight my dad because he makes me super freaking mad kind of thing. you
I
know
think to summarize what you're saying, I'm just going to paraphrase, and you give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down if I got this wrong. You know that you're following your passion correctly when you can logically refute criticism. So I think that, like, if you like, okay, I hear what this person, good, excellent, okay, I got the thumbs up for those who can't see, which is pretty much just everyone outside me and you. So basically, if you can logically refute what other people are saying, then you should continue on with your passion. But if somebody says something, if your best friend comes up to you and says, "Hey man, no one likes your music," or just, "Hey man, you're going to be evicted next month," and you don't have an answer to that problem, right? Like, you cannot conjure up a logical or reasonable explanation, then it's definitely, at the very least, you need a pause. You need to take a good solid pause and double check yourself. Excellent, man. This was a great conversation. Next week, we're actually going to explore some Eastern philosophy, and maybe instead of living like this, because I think Westerners love passion, but Easterners actually love detachment. They actually believe that detachment is a much better way to view, to go through life. So next week, we're going to be talking about detachment. Kenny, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Aaron, thank you for having me, mate.
This concludes the 134th episode of the Truth Island podcast. I'm Aaron Azrod.